Hey, John, are you on the line? I think you have the first item.
Hello, everybody. I see that the first people in the retrospective all are not able to talk. I wish them well. I hope that is solved very soon. Well, I suppose we just read their issues, the first two. Fabio.
Yes, sorry, let me interrupt. I think I just promoted John, and if people can help promote others as well. Sorry about
There we
that.
go. Now I'm back.
Much better. I thought it was a problem with the mic or something.
So, the first issue that was mine was GitLab staging on CDN. We have enabled CDN support for GitLab staging that is active. And so now all testing done for staging.gitlab.com passes through CDN. So that should alleviate the problems we had last release.
Okay. Next item, LDAP on staging. I don't know, John. I didn't see it active yet. Is that blocked on anything?
No, it's not blocked. So that was just us. We need to get the configuration from the test LDAP server. So we'll pull that out and put that in. All
right. Well, the follow-up test is add LDAP to GitLab QA. I'm happy to announce that we've merged the first iteration of that, which is to test basic logins. There's still more to test, but that's the first thing to do. So I'm looking to improve that over the coming weeks of adding SSL, adding LDAP group sync and all that, but that's in place. That would have caught the issue we've had in 10.4. Fabio.
Thank you, Stan. So also talking about the staging, we improved a lot the way to test CI/CD and security products related features. So now we have shared runners working correctly on staging too. We had a problem with the registry certificate, but it has been fixed. So thank you everyone that worked to make it perfect. And so testing on staging is now probably 100% complete, at least for our items. Okay, so what went well this month? First item is still mine. The release process for RC has been improved a lot. So we have also very good communication now, and this helps in avoid losing time or try to find the correct process to do something. So for example, FA tasks, you can find a link in the issue, were easier because staging was working as expected. And also vendoring out to DevOps templates, that was a major pain in the last release, so in 10.4. Now it's not fully streamlined yet, but it has been improved a lot. And so you can find an example to, if I remember well, as a merge request that was quite simple to address. And the release managers were clear in what they need, and we were clear on what we expect. And so it was done without major problems. Camille, next point is yours.
Yes, thank you, Fabio. So basically, previously it's like it was always said that like everyone has to test their changes, but basically in the CI/CD team we started enforcing that more carefully as the reviewers, like the proper QA before merging stuff. And this actually like writing some description of like the QA that either developer has to do or like reviewer before merging things help us to catch some of the small bugs, like the behavior expected, like the difference in like behavior of some of the features that was delivered, that was implemented instead of like delivered of like what was expected. And this actually reduced some amount of the regressions because we could figure out that faster, earlier actually. Also, like I'm phrasing after Fabio and staging. Actually, we were able to verify everything on staging from the CI, and it's like the most important for me personally for the previous release was traces on object storage, and we are basically able to ensure that this is fully working in production like environment before going to GitLab.com. So this is definitely something that did help us a lot in being more confident. Fabio, what went wrong?
Yeah, Camille. Yeah, so we had a few problems. I'm calling problems and not regressions. You will see later why. That was spotted after the feature freeze. So I feel that we still have let's see, some different flows between product and engineering in how to manage the feature assurance and how to notify possible problems there. But I put another note to talk specifically about that. So my understanding is that the priority should be avoid shipping problems instead of benefits to users. So it's not really a matter of, it is a problem of specifications or a problem of implementation or the design, but it just, if I find something that is bringing a confusion or problem to user, I don't want to, let's say, I as a product manager, I don't want it to be shipped as is, and that's why I created a few regressions labeled issues, but they're absolutely not for blaming someone's work, but to discuss and solve problems earlier. So I'm not really sure that we all share the idea that, let's say, the responsibility of a feature is shared between all the departments. So just to make clear that it's not a blaming to a specific implementation, it's just an early warning to avoid possible problems for users. And anyway, at the end, everything went well since we did the changes that we needed for the very, let's say, bad things. And we just postponed after a discussion everything that was not really needed in order to avoid a lot of extra work after the feature freeze there. Sean, Michael, or Camille?
Yeah, I'll start, thanks. So we had a few, quite a lot of issues with object storage migrations. Jarv's mentioned that object storage is only a migration blocker now for artifacts, LFS, and traces. So I think traces and artifacts are enabled currently, and LFS is awaiting a fix before we enable that. But somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. We have an issue with, we had an issue when we enabled inadvertently, I think, LFS on production. And then we had some data loss when we tried to migrate back from object storage to local storage. Camille created a great post-mortem issue for that. So Camille, I don't know if you want to take over from here and talk about what happened there, and then you've got the next.
Yes. Sure. It was actually fun to go through this discovery process because like so many things that go wrong there that like it probably we could create some retro out of this issue alone. But like the root cause of like all of these mayhem that we had that lead to LFS data loss is basically GitLab configuration was locking test for the default values. It enabled background upload of everything, and it enabled, and we didn't notice that on staging because staging didn't have object storage for LFS enabled, and production did have So essentially, we enabled on production way more than we actually tested on staging. And this kind of led to the problem that we've seen users complaining about unable to download the data out of LFS because of the Google Cloud Storage not returning HTTPS address, and GitLFS clients complaining because of that. When we actually then did go into migrating data back into local storage, at the first we thought that the migration code was broken because like we had data loss. But it turned out the migration code was not broken. What was broken, like out of this migration, was that we were able to concurrently run 2 migrations in 2 different directions. So basically, we had the background upload, which was migrating to remote storage, and we had local upload, which was, and we had like another code which was migrating into local storage because there was no exclusive locking there. But what is even worse there, that we didn't have the versioning and the backups in the place to be able to recover the data. So we effectively hit this small, tiny time when we, out of over 2,000 objects that we tried to migrate back, we failed to migrate 42. They were on the objects storage before, but because we didn't have versioning on the bucket, we basically removed them without being able to recover that. This is like very long story, a very long discovery phase of like what did go wrong, but a lot of things basically. Sean, Jarf, or Alex, do you want to add anything because you were also involved in that?
Yeah, the only thing I added there was that with regard to the staging and production configuration difference, it'd be nice to know whether this was a process problem where it was just no one thought to ask whether this was enabled on staging, whether we thought it was enabled and it wasn't. But at least I do have an issue open for this in the new environment that we're going to try to make it so that the tooling enforces the promotion of configuration from staging to production. So
how to actually to like the action out of that? There is like a number of actions. Some of them we started implementing, not all of them are yet implemented. The main action is to make our migration code to not break that way in the first place. And everything else is basically related on improving resiliency of everything that did happen here. And one of them is like what is John describing, the making more parity in the configuration, something that we are struggling for some time already. And like forcing us to better testing and staging before we deploy something to production, because this was also the case that we actually on staging, we tested something different than we actually did run on the production. There was difference in the configuration. So we tested happy path of like the data are stored, they are downloadable, but it turned out in the end that we did not test the clue, the main part of the feature. Sean, I know that you brought another point, not clear who is coordinating.
Yeah, so part of this was just the issue I had when trying to fill in that retrospective that you linked earlier about the LFS data loss. It's like, it's kind of hard to like fill in a timeline as someone who wasn't working on it, because like it wasn't clear to me like where we did the work. So we have issues for LFS uploads and artifacts, so I can't find the current issue for artifacts. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, but they don't seem to be updated very frequently, and I'm not sure they have all the information in them that is current. So it's like, I'm involved in this and I find it hard to figure out what's going on. So for somebody who's not involved in this to figure out what's going on is going to be super hard, right? So I think this is sort of a tricky thing because it's like sort of spread across like different Slack channels and issues that are like specific bugs that we need to fix in the code, and issues in the infrastructure tracker where we need to coordinate things with the production team, and then we do some things in calls, and then we have a Google Doc, which you've linked to next. Jarv's asking, or saying Alex is owning object storage on the production side, would it help to have a single issue / milestone for all object storage work? Yeah, I think it would. I think just like, knowing this is who you talk to, this is where you can find the issue, the details asynchronously if you want, but if you can't find what you need from that, this is who to talk to would help a lot here. Because I think it's basically Kamil, Shinya, Mikhail, and Alex working on this, but it's not clear to me like how it all fits together, and I'm not sure it's clear to everybody in that group how it all fits together, so it would be nice to make that clearer. I will add an action for that.
Okay, thank you, Sean, because I had like more private conversation with John and Alex Friday last week. It was Tuesday last week when we had the Google Doc with like the current status, but to be fair, this should be put in the issue where everyone can contribute. And I definitely think that this is the missing part of what you are expecting. So this is the current status in the Google Doc. Also related to object storage, we last Friday discovered live traces issue. It came by the accident. We had actually fixed merged, but it's also something that had some potential impact on the customers, but we didn't receive any reports of the customers facing this problem. But it will require some corrective action to bring back this data because of the application bug. We tried to estimate after discovering that how important is that to patch production right now, or whether it can wait to next patch release. And we figured out that the impact of this issue is very minimal, so we merged a fix for that today. But we seem that we're gonna have to patch production to stop bleeding. Fortunately, this affected a small amount of the, I'm not really aware of anyone being affected by that issue, but it's possible that some of the users are affected and may be affected, where we actually move data away for the job trace, and we don't bring back to the correct storage because of unable to update the data in the database. It's actually quite well described in the issue. Not sure if there is anything else to add there. Mikhail.
So yeah, like a lot of the actual problems that happen in the data loss, I should have put that into the data loss, but it's just like we actually tried to merge something, a feature that was not meant to be used until like further testing was done on the geotest bed. And one of the our path to do that was to actually merge it into master so we could get a nightly package out of it, and then do the testing on the geotest bed. But like, unfortunately, this merge actually inadvertently like toggled a background, like a configuration. So in hindsight, like we should probably not use maybe we should not like merge into master to actually test something out on the geotest bed, and we should build packages out of branch. So like this is more contained on the test bed. This is only like an insight.
Okay, I think I've got the last thing on object storage for now, which is just a sort of more general point. And I think this is a classic case of us like always thinking we were like 80% done. But we had a refactor tied to a feature because we thought the feature was relatively small, but the refactor was more important. And some of the issues above have been caused by that coupling. And if we had known up front, maybe, I mean, it's hard to say, but like if we'd known up front that this wouldn't be a blocker for the GCP migration, it might have been easier to say, well, let's do the refactor first, then do the feature. Whereas because we were feeling some time pressure, even though it's actually taken a really long time, we were trying to do them all together, which is obviously how you get issues like this, because you know, this is like, and yeah, Mikhail's mentioning that we're porting this to C right after the refactor, Libre even, and like, you know, again, ideally, if we could, with the benefit of perfect hindsight, do this all again, we would refactor this in Libre first, then add the feature. But obviously we can't do that now. The only thing there to take forward is to try and identify cases where this is likely to happen in future and not let it happen again. So yeah, Kamil, yeah, you again.
Okay, so we had some serious regression affecting our paid customers. I mentioned in the beginning about Q&A failed. This was actually one case when we did a QA, manual QA before merging stuff, but like basically we didn't test EEP, and we didn't test that feature on EEP, which added some additional constraints. It kind of affected our paid customers because it caused another bug, which was even more significant than not updating the variables itself, because it made them unable to run deployment pipelines on the new branches. I mean, it's one of these hard cases. Like, we prepared the fix quite quickly, but I wonder, like, this is like the ideal case that we should probably react better if we would just revert that feature and deploy reverted version as soon as we figure out that. Because delivering the fix for that bug that took us, if I remember correctly, 4 working days. So it is not insignificant amount. It took us 4 working days to prepare a fix, make sure that it's actually fully tested and it's deployed on gitlab.com. Jarv.
Yeah, I just noticed that the regression for the large SSH keys was missing, so I added it. Just in also making a point here that we should add the test to QA. There's an issue open for it, but it'd be nice to try to get this in, get these changes in quicker. But you know, I think it's a fairly straightforward bug, and it was fixed fairly quickly. Next.
Yeah, it's me next. During this release, or after the release went out, we noticed a regression in the Omnibus builds that basically caused some users' upgrades to fail. This was in regards to users who had a custom Git data dirs configuration, and where they had probably had been running GitLab for a while and had received in the past deprecation warning for our changes to that syntax back in the 9.6 release, and then had updated it, or the 9 release, and had updated it to our recommended that we had printed out then. The problem with that in Omnibus is we were using to give them the recommendation of what to change that config to, we were using a 2JSON to spit out the config, giving them JSON syntax rather than Ruby syntax. And that previously was working with how the Git data dirs config had been built. But in 10.5, we ended up doing some cleanup that removed the ability for that JSON syntax to work, which we weren't even really aware was like working. But the fact that the JSON syntax was removed was basically a regression. So we fixed that right away in the first patch that went out. And then we have a plan moving forward to print our recommendations for config changes for deprecation messages. We're going to start printing those in Ruby, in more of a Ruby syntax, using the awesome print gem. So that was one major regression we had causing grief. And then also, as part of our Let's Encrypt feature that we added in Omnibus, we didn't turn on shipping of intermediate SSL certificates with Let's Encrypt, which is preventing some users from being able to use the feature to its fullest. So we'll be fixing that in an upcoming patch.
So we have 5 minutes left. Let's continue going. So feel free to drop if you have a different thing that you need to go to in 5 minutes, but we'll keep going as long as Emily says it's okay and we can continue to have this Zoom open. I think, Felipe, you're next.
Okay, so in this release, my point is about that all front-end deliverables had either a regression open or weren't done. And they are not the kind of regressions we usually do. I think we have two main problems. I've linked to the CI/CD retrospective there, but I think we have two main problems. And the first one is that in the specification phase, the vision that product has is not the same that engineering team understands. So what ends up being implemented is not the thing that should be implemented, which causes the second communication problem, which is basically in every deliverable, there's a regression being open because the regression label is being used both for things that were working before that merge request and were broken in that merge request, but also for the things that weren't specified in the issue and therefore weren't implemented. And because we are not all in the same page, this is a source of frustration. And also we lose a lot of time in back and forth in each issue opened as a regression, every release deciding if it's a regression or not and why it isn't. And we've been discussing this for a couple of months. I think the first time it was brought up was on 10.0, and we've been discussed that in the CI/CD retrospective also for all these releases, but we haven't been able to reach any action items on how to improve the situation. So I think we need help, and I've left some proposals or questions on how to improve. If we can make the specification, how can we make the specification phase better so both product and engineering are in the same page and engineering is implementing the same. I'm not sure if maybe doing the planning step a little bit earlier in the process would help avoiding not having deliverables still without the final decision in the last week of the release cycle, and probably creating another label other than regression to tackle the things that weren't specified in the issue and because of that they weren't implemented instead of regressions. And Fabio left a point. I'm not sure if you want to add up anything to this.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Filippo. So I totally agree. Yeah, this is not the first time it happened, unfortunately. Last time it was, let's say, not resolved. This time I tried to figure out the root causes of this problem. So probably the first thing is that as a product, we are considering regressions, all the things that are due to, let's say, product or UX regressions. But that is not shared with the process that engineers have, where engineers consider regressions exactly if the issue is implemented by the specifications or not. As I said before, I consider more regression if we are introducing a problem, if you are shipping a problem to users. I feel that maybe we can create a new label. This could be a good option. I don't think that having a planning done early can help a lot. We already did. We have plans done for a couple of releases in forward, but these problems are coming from, let's say, specific cases or something that will be specified once the implementation is clear. So probably we cannot reach the details we need, even if we do it 3 months or 4 months earlier. And also having let's say the different process may help. I'm still not sure that feature assurance is fully understood. So, and I put a point later, but I can anticipate now. We talked about that in the product meeting. And it seems that the vision is, let's say, the understanding is quite different. So I was asked to find a process that can work for both, or at least find a way to avoid shipping problems. That is our own goal. We don't really say commit to use one label or the other. We just want to avoid shipping problems. And I'm talking with engineering leads in order to find which is their understanding of the process, and then I'll come out with a proposal and obviously share it with engineers, so we can try to say having feature assurance effective and fully shared between the groups, so without creating this frustration that is on both sides, unfortunately. One of the big problems that is regression a priority label? For product, it is not. So putting a regression label doesn't imply that you have to work on it immediately. I understood that in the engineering department, this is considered a priority label. So it's a sort of pushing something to be done immediately, and this can create some problems. So this is one of the points that can be cleared up. If you look at the link to the product agenda, you can find more details there. Can see a few comments. I don't know if someone that is writing wants to jump in and talk. Okay, otherwise, I think we can jump into what we can improve. First point is mine. The idea of merge smaller, merge earlier, when possible, obviously, can help in spotting product UX problems or misalignments in features before the feature freeze. So asking for feature assurance, even if you are not ready to merge the feature, helps. It is working, I feel, this is my my feeling at the moment, quite well in Nintendo 6, where we are already doing feature assurance, even if we are 2 weeks far from the feature freeze, and we already spotted a few things, or we confirmed that everything is working fine. So this is really, really awesome. I know that it's quite hard because reviewers are developing things, so they will review mostly by the end of the cycle, but if you can split things in small iterations within the same cycle and prepare, even merge if possible, small things, this helps a lot product and UX to validate them first. Next point, Philippa.
So we need to improve the communication on CI/CD between product and engineering team. Mostly, I was reading Dao's point in the last thing I mentioned exactly because I don't think the problem is how we define a regression. The problem is what is causing us to have all these regressions. So if we could fix the specification phase to include everything that needs to be implemented, I think the second problem with the regression label itself would be fixed by its own. So what is causing us to have all these issues what is causing the engineering team not to implement what is the product vision, and how can we fix that? But I'm not really sure how can we improve this. And I think next point is Eric's.
Yeah, so this is really the product of a conversation I had with BJ. So credit to him, but his take was that the work that we've been doing over the past several releases related to feature assurance, meaning things that are at the level that they appear in the kickoff doc, and then receive feature assurance, has been going pretty well. Obviously, still things we can always improve, as Fabio mentioned, but that's really the reason why 10.4 was a relatively smooth release. On the surface, 10.5 was rougher, but his take was that work related to that specific type of feature carried over into 10.5 and in fact improved and got better. His take on why 10.5 was a little bit rougher was a different type of issue, meaning things that are smaller, touch existing features, so are more likely to cause regressions, and don't really rise to the level of that kickoff doc, which was used as the source material for the feature assurance work. So what he was suggesting, what I think is a good idea, is some kind of process by which things that don't reach that level of detail nevertheless get structured QA. So they go into issues, or they go into a single issue with the checklist, one, to make sure that it's happening at the appropriate time, but also to make it repeatable. So if it needs to happen over the course of several release candidates, we've got essentially a script that we could repeat or that we could clone and repeat to make that easier. The challenge there is that, and the reason why this doesn't just happen easily is because there's a large volume of these issues. At least there was in 10.5. So BJ's take was if we were to just do this the simple naive way in 10.5, it would have been far too much to QA in the first release candidate. So we need to figure out a way to do the highest priority stuff or spread it out over the release process. And that's an interesting challenge, but something that I hope that Marin, but hopefully he can delegate to one of the next release managers, can help figure out in partnership with QA and the Edge team. Sean, you're up next.
Yeah, this is just the item I added from earlier to create a clear single source of truth for the object storage migrations that we are performing on GitLab.com. What's blocking them, who's working on them, etc. I think Camille actually volunteered to do this instead. So thanks, Camille. That makes it easier for me.
Okay, Sean, I will ask you for a contribution there, and
okay.
I also ask other people. So don't feel so great. You will still have to contribute.
Okay, so I think that's the last improvement. So just looking at the list that we've generated so far, Fabio's first one is a good one, but I think it's something that's sort of a best practice that we need everybody to do. We need managers holding their teams accountable to merge smaller and merge earlier. We need peers to hold each other accountable in the code review process to do this, but it isn't necessarily a large action item that we can give to a single person here. But definitely, I think that's a good one, and we should do that. Philippa, your item about communication between CI/CD product engineering teams, I think that's correct, but we do need to think about like specifically what can we try process-wise, communication-wise, people-wise to make that more actionable. My third one, I'm biased, but I think we definitely need to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and bold it. I'll put it on Marin, but I'll hope that he delegates that to a release manager. And then Sean and Camille, I think we could definitely use this grouping of the object storage issues. So let's say we're going to go with numbers 3 and 4 for the next one, and it'll be Marin to be delegated and Camille for the second one. Any last comments or thoughts from anybody?
Should we make this meeting 1 hour and then just adjourn earlier if we don't need it?
I think it's been pretty regularly falling within 30 minutes. I think this one was an aberration, but I think it was for a good reason. So I'm okay with going 8 minutes over and just trying to continue to force it into 30 minutes. Maybe we could do the next one is just remind people to be cognizant of the time and make sure that they're being efficient. And if we go over, make it a deliberate decision.
Okay, that sounds great.